get 100 up to 150 points for every kid. There's that second safety net, they're percentile ranked, and then they get points based upon where they fell. So that's very important because that's 25% of your overall SPS. So the 7th grade kid who has to grow 40 or 50 points, if he shows growth, still can bring the school in points based upon the level of growth that they have. Let's tie that to VAM. So VAM for the teacher means that we're looking at how much value did you add to the students that were in the seats in your classroom in the last school year. So that is this huge complicated formula that's applied after all the information is in about the students. That's why a couple of months ago it was so important that you went into CBR and verified those rosters, because that's the information that fed that VAM formula that said these kids were with Ms. Smith, or this kid was only there for 60 days this year, so we're not going to include them in the VAM data. So as we move forward into next year, it's even more important that you verify those rosters, because that's going to contribute to the teacher's 35% of their overall teaching evaluation. Back to Compass, tying this back to Compass. State law and BESI policy recognized that value-added data would be unavailable in the past years, so we called it transitional student growth data. It was essentially value-added data, but it was unofficial, so they just called it transitional student growth data, so you could use it as a reference. Value-added data is back for the 17-18 school year. That is all going to be calculated on August 1st. So if you've entered your data into CIS for your teachers, and you put a professional practice score from their observations, and you put a 3, and you put a 2 for their SLTs, and you put a 2 there, but the teacher is 4th through 8th grade in those 3 subject areas, on August 1st, the system's going to recalculate those teachers that are VAM teachers and give them a final rating. So right now it might say 2.5 for the 4th grade teacher of ELA, but after August 1st, it's going to take that 35% VAM, plug it in there, and her score is going to adjust. That's why it says in red when you go into CIS right now that this is not a final score for VAM teachers. That'll be done in August. So that's something important to consider. You can close out everybody 3rd grade and below, and you can close out everybody 9th through 12, and you can close out science teachers in those 4th through 8. State law requires that value added comprise 35% of the total evaluation. Remaining 15% is going to be on SLTs. The law does not permit adjustments to value-added ratings as it's currently outlined in policy. Policy used to have this little provision in it that said that you could adjust a teacher's final rating by 1 up or down. That's been removed from from Bulletin 130, so you can no longer do that. So this is the pie that I kept alluding to. 50% from your observations and 50% from student growth. If I'm a VAM teacher, it's going to look like this. If I'm not a VAM teacher, it's going to be like this, just from SLTs. I want you to take a second and just think about something. And I really want you to reflect on what your expectations are for your teachers when it comes to writing their SLTs. And I'll preface it with this. If my teacher who's in the VAM category has 35% of her score coming from data related to students' performance, right? Then do I want to have my teachers also write SLTs on data? That means that if the data is poor, my teacher doesn't get any credit whatsoever. That's something to consider. Because oftentimes, I'm not sure what the policy is in EBR, but oftentimes districts were advising their schools to write SLTs that would say, 60% of my kids are going to meet their growth to mastery target. Well, if that's the case, and your VAM is low, that also means you're not going to meet your SLT as well. So then the teacher's got 50% of their score that's really, really low. So that's something to consider doing or not doing based upon your district's policy.